faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. Today, we're diving into the book Bullshit Jobs.
First, let's do a pointless little interaction.
Do you think your job is meaningful? Press 1 if yes, press 2 if no. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you feel your job is meaningless, you're not alone. According to a YouGov survey, 37% of Britons feel their jobs contribute nothing to the world, and another 13% are unsure. In the Netherlands, that number is higher, with 40% of Dutch people believing their jobs have no reason to exist. Why do people feel their jobs are meaningless, and what kinds of jobs count as meaningless? That's the question this book aims to answer. The author, David Graeber, was an American anthropologist, a former professor at the London School of Economics, and a key figure in the Occupy Wall Street movement. This large-scale 2011 protest, set against the financial crisis, targeted money-driven politics in the U.S. Graeber not only demonstrated, but also helped organize it. The book stems from an article Graeber wrote in 2013 for the Radical magazine strike, titled On the Phenomenon of Bullshit Jobs. Tender bullshit jobs here refer to meaningless work that serves no real purpose, like excessive admin or paperwork. If these jobs vanished, it wouldn't cause harm or even be noticed. After Graeber's article was published, it got translated into over 10 languages, hit over 1 million clicks, and readers flooded him with emails about their meaningless, painful jobs. And this book expands on that article. With 8 chapters and 360,000 words, Graeber uses real cases to define and categorize meaningless jobs and explains why they're harmful to workers. He also explores why such jobs come to exist. Published in 2018, the book was named a Best Book of the Year by outlets like The Times and Financial Times. It has also received strong recommendations from many scholars. Professor Lu Qing from the Political Science Department at East China Normal University said, "Although this brilliant anthropologist is occasionally extreme, he sparks readers' thinking and exploration. Beyond boring labor or unemployment, do we have other choices?" Next, I'll interpret the main content of this book for you through 3 parts. First, what is meaningless work? Second, why does meaningless work make people unhappy? Third, why does meaningless work exist? Let's start with part 1. What is meaningless work? According to Graeber's definition, it has 3 elements.
First, it's a job that pays a regular salary.
Second, it's meaningless and often harmful.
Third, the workers themselves can't find a reason for the job's existence.
Kurt does exactly such a job. His company is a subcontractor to a subcontractor to a subcontractor for the German military. The German military, outsources IT-related work to Company A, which then outsources the related logistics to Company B, and Company B's HR department subcontract to Company C, Kurt's employer. Therefore, if a German soldier wants to move workstations, instead of moving the computer 5 meters to the new spot, he has to fill out a form first. Company A, responsible for IT, receives the form. After approval by the relevant person, it's forwarded to Company B, responsible for logistics. Company B approves the workstation adjustment order and sends it to Company C, responsible for personnel matters. So Kurt, working for Company C, drives over 100 kilometers to the soldier's barracks, fills out another form, removes the soldier's computer, packs it in a box, seals it, has Company B move the box to the new workstation. Then Kurt goes to the new spot, unpacks the box, fills out a third form, sets up the computer, gets all signatures, drives back to the office to file the paperwork, and finally gets paid. Kurt knows his job is meaningless, just wasting taxpayers' money. If his position were eliminated, there would be no negative impact. Instead, it would push the German military to find a more sensible way to handle workstation moves. Some bullshit jobs are so meaningless that if the worker disappeared, no one would even notice. In 2016, Spanish media broke a story about a civil servant who got paid but didn't show up for work. instead studying philosopher Spinoza's writings, and his absence lasted at least 6 years before being caught. And this engineer named Garcia from the Water Bureau had once worked diligently, but later, when the Water Bureau changed management, the new bosses disliked Garcia and assigned him no real work, causing him to develop depression. And rather than pretending to be busy in the office every day, it's better not to go and save time for meaningful things. Like studying Spinoza's philosophy, Garcia told the Water Bureau his work was supervised by the municipal authorities and told the municipal authorities his work was managed by the Water Bureau. Ah, no, we.
Except for mandatory events, he stayed home the rest of the time.
So, how was he discovered? Turns out, because Garcia had served for so long, he received a medal personally awarded by the deputy mayor. Only then did people realize he hadn't entered the office in 6 years. In the book, the author categorizes meaningless jobs into 5 types. The first is flunkies, jobs whose main or sole purpose is to make someone seem important. It's like how feudal lords always had various servants around them.
Flunkies flatter and suck up to highlight their master's importance.
Modern companies and institutions also have such flunky-type roles. Gert, from the Netherlands, is a receptionist at a publishing company. His daily tasks, beyond taking one phone call, include keeping the reception fruit bowl stocked with mints and winding the meeting room clock once a week. Handling one call a day could be done by other staff. This role is utterly pointless. But if a company has no one at the front desk, people get suspicious. For instance, if a firm lacks a receptionist, might it also have other shady practices? Could they shortchange my royalties? So Gert exists just to make the company look professional. If Gert is a passive prop, Jack's flunky role is more active. Jack is a telemarketer at a securities firm, but he doesn't actually sell stocks. He just tells potential clients he's representing a broker, offering free research on some listed company. Results. This is all to build up the broker's impressive image. If they're so busy they need assistance to make calls, they must be incredibly capable. After flunkies, let's talk about the second type, boons, jobs involving aggression and deception. Tom works for a post-production company creating effects like building explosions or alien attacks for films, but increasingly does ad work, using visual tricks to make toothpaste or lotion look miraculous, or digitally removing eye bags from TV personalities, slimming down celebrities to sell products. Tom believes meaningful work should either fulfill existing needs or create new ones that improve lives. But his job just exaggerates product effects, tricking people into fake needs. Thus, his work is meaningless. Many bullshit jobs feel this way, like in call centers. For example, they lure you with free service to buy a $1.99 2-week membership for access. And when you log in to use that membership, you get auto-renewed. The third meaningless job type is duct tapers, roles existing solely to fix problems that shouldn't exist. The classic example is constantly cleaning up messes made by incompetent bosses. Magda once worked as a tester at an SME, proofreading reports by a star statistician.
This statistician knew nothing about statistics, not even basic grammar, writing reports almost without verbs.
Since the reports were so terrible, Magda had to painstakingly convince him to rewrite, but he'd refused to change anything. Magda then showed reports to supervisors, but they didn't understand statistics either. So they dragged their feet on feedback. Most duct taping jobs exist because the system is broken, but no one wants to fix it. For instance, many told the author their job was transferring national oil well data between systems, or manually entering flight info into Excel. These problems could be easily solved with automation, but management keeps dragging their feet. The fourth type of meaningless job is box tickers. They exist to pretend the organization is taking action, covering up its inaction. Bosch works as a recreational coordinator at a nursing home, and his most important task is asking residents, "What are your hobbies and interests?" He enters the answers into forms and computers, and that's where it ends. Nothing comes of it. Facing Bosch's questions, residents often feel impatient because they know it's bullshit paperwork. The nursing home doesn't genuinely care what residents like, want, or do for leisure. Bash knows this too. He spends time on paperwork that should go toward residents' hobbies, making real impact impossible. The fifth meaningless job type is taskmasters, divided into two kinds. The first kind's entire job is assigning work to others. For example, many middle managers just act as messengers. Remove them, and employees below could still do the work fine. The second kind is what the author calls bullshit job generators. Their main mission is creating meaningless work for others and supervising its completion. Crow is a provost at a UK university, a role with little real power focused on proposing strategic visions and policies. Many teachers and scholars dread the word strategy because it likely means endless paperwork. Teachers are forced to spend excessive time evaluating their own work to prove their necessity, and Crow is the one producing this bullshit work. Crow has a small support team. His brilliant personal assistant handles flights and hotels. His special projects officer helps with bullshit work related to strategic visions. There's also a postdoc researcher, completely wasteful since Crow does his own research, so the researcher just works on personal projects. This bullshit job regularly panicked Crow. After 2 years as provost, he transferred to a department chair position, but resigned after just 6 months. 90% of his work was filling forms and writing reports. Forms about strategic visions, forms about strategic visions, forms about faculty funding, personnel, costs, 5-year plans, and so on. These forms and reports were almost never followed up on. But to complete the task, Crow had to ask subordinates to help him with it. Thus, his own bullshit work seeped into others' jobs. By now, we've covered the 5 types of meaningless work: flunkies, goons, duct tapers, box tickers, and taskmasters. Many people's bullshit jobs involve multiple types. For example, you might be both a flunky, whose main task is to make the boss look important, and a duct taper cleaning up after incompetent leaders. Sometimes you even delegate such work to others, making you a taskmaster too. 3 additional points about meaningless work. First, meaningless work isn't the same as shitty work. Take the cleaners at the author's university. They're underpaid and overworked, often treated unreasonably. The cleaners don't see their work as meaningless because the campus needs cleaning. Its operation relies on them. Second, whether a job is meaningful depends mainly on the worker's subjective judgment. As the author notes, who better to make that call than those doing the job? If most workers in a role feel it has no social value, we should accept that as truth. Third, probably no job is entirely free of bullshit elements. But many told the author their job's bullshit index has risen in recent decades, like educators spending more time on admin paperwork, or nurses complaining 80% of their shift is consumed by forms and meetings. Odd. All right, 1. A study of American white-collar workers found time spent on actual work dropped from 46% in 2015 to 39% in 2016. Correspondingly, time wasted in useless meetings rose from 8% to 10%, and admin work from 9% to 11%. Hearing this, you might say, aren't these meaningless jobs great? Getting paid without doing much sounds like a dream job. Classical economic theory seems to support this. A rational economic actor always chooses the most cost-effective action, minimal effort for maximum gain. Yet, as Russian writer Dostoevsky famously said, the cruelest torture is forcing someone endlessly to do meaningless work. Feedback to the author shows most bullshit job holders feel not lucky but pained or depressed. Why does meaningless work make people unhappy? Part 2 explores this specifically because humans need to do meaningful, useful things. Surveys show 74 to 80% of workers claim they wouldn't quit even if they won the lottery and got rich. In some prisons, revoking privileges like scrubbing toilets or factory labor is punishment, even when inmates get free room and board and other income. For instance, scientists find humans deeply crave impacting the world. In 1901, German psychologist Karl Gross discovered babies light up when first realizing their actions predictably affect the world. And the outcome, whether beneficial or not, doesn't diminish their joy. Say a baby moves its arm and a pencil shifts. Then, repeating the action makes the pencil move again. The baby's face shows pure delight. This shows human self-awareness builds on action. Further experiments found if babies first experience this action-based joy, then lose the opportunity, they grow angry and show trauma symptoms, like withdrawal. Meaningless workers undergo similar trauma. They thought they were hired for usefulness, but must now pretend to perform value, faking competence daily. This erodes self-esteem and shakes identity foundations. Per the author, sees meaningful impact on the world, and one ceases to exist. Many bullshit job holders also face scriptlessness, no cultural blueprint for their situation, meaning they struggle to find cultural templates for how to respond. Many don't know what they should feel, causing psychological anguish. The book gives Eric's example. He developed and operated an interface management system for a major design company to coordinate work across 7 regional offices. Eric soon realized he was a duct taper. His job existed solely because partners competed viciously and had severe communication breakdowns. Each office was run by a partner who often competed for the same projects or unexpectedly showed up at the same client's office. They'd end up hastily merging proposals in the client's parking lot before meetings.
To prevent repeats, one partner pushed hard for an interface system, but others resisted.
They paid lip service while sabotaging it, buying cheap, buggy software and hiring Eric, a 21-year-old history grad with zero coding experience, to improve it. So Eric was also a box ticker, pretending progress was happening. Months later, Eric grew disgusted. His rebellion began, arriving late, leaving early, drinking at lunch, taking 3-hour walks, even studying French barefoot at his desk.
When he tried quitting, his boss refused and offered a 2,600 raise instead.
Because what bosses wanted wasn't software excellence, it was ensuring the system never worked. Eric reluctantly took the raise, but escalated his antics. Showing up drunk, fabricating business trips. He quit twice more, each time ending with another raise. Finally, Eric snapped. He skipped work and binged on ecstasy for 3 days. In despair, he slipped a resignation under his boss's door, forfeited his pay, fled to Morocco, then recovered by gardening at home for 6 months. Actually, Eric had it better. His bosses didn't care what he did. Many with meaningless jobs must still pretend to be busy. Because bosses believe they've bought your work hours. Slacking during work hours is robbing the boss. This concept of workers' time belonging to employers is modern. An ancient Greek seeing a potter might buy pottery or buy the potter as a slave. But tell that Greek he could buy the potter's time, and he'd be baffled. Time was abstract. Until medieval Europe, people measured it roughly by actions, like how long it took to boil an egg twice. But with astronomy and clockmaking, time became precisely measurable, transforming into a commodity to be bought, cherished, and morally managed. Factories installed clocks, punch cards tracked hours, workers demanded 8-hour days and overtime pay. This reinforced one idea. When workers clock in, their time belongs to the boss, purchased work hours. Thus, they must stay busy or pretend to be during work hours.
Ever finish work faster than others, then grab coffee or lift weights to relax? Instead of praise, the boss accuses you of slacking and piles on more tasks.
The book describes Mitch, a ranch hand. Mitch's boss insisted that if work was done, workers must collect rocks, claiming it prevented tractors from getting stuck.
More importantly, rock picking instilled proper work ethic, whether the field needed clearing or where rocks went afterward. The boss didn't care.
The author notes bosses just want to exercise power. They declare, "Your time is mine. Work should have purpose." But when work is meaningless, yet you must pretend otherwise,
It becomes ultimate humiliation and the pinnacle of human unfreedom.
as early as the 1830s, economist Keynes predicted that by the end of the 20th century, automated machine production could replace most worthless jobs. People would only need to work 15 hours a week, freeing up more time to pursue life's pleasures
And chase their dreams.
Entering the 21st century, reality hasn't developed as Keynes predicted. According to the author's observations, nearly 50% of jobs are meaningless, yet they persist. Why do these meaningless jobs exist? In Part 3, we'll discuss this, focusing on 3 reasons. First, because it's profitable. British writer Dickens wrote about a massive inheritance dispute in Bleak House. Lawyers exhausted all tactics to delay the verdict until the inheritance was drained by legal fees. Only then did the enriched lawyers declare the case irrelevant, ending it abruptly. Such things aren't just fiction. The author argues that if a company's business is distributing large funds while profiting from them, the best money-making strategy is to minimize actual work. For instance, in 2006, the UK experienced the payment protection insurance scandal. Many banks claimed to customers that this insurance would protect their assets if unable to repay loans due to illness or job loss. But often it didn't work, and illegal sales practices were involved. Courts ruled banks must refund these fees. Banks allocated huge compensation funds and outsourced payouts to accounting firms. Among those handling compensation, at least some deliberately dragged out the process to extend contracts. A man named Elliot told the author that some firm managers even said, "We make money by fixing leaky pipes. Do you think we should actually plug this leak?" Or similar words. The author received many such reports. Whenever large compensation funds emerge, a full bureaucracy springs up to handle claims, verifying recipients, processing applications, etc.
This bureaucracy often employs hundreds or thousands funded by the compensation, so they lack incentive for efficiency. Thus, meaningless jobs multiply.
The second reason lies in managerial feudalism. Essentially, many aspects of modern economic systems resemble medieval European feudalism. The author argues medieval feudalism was fundamentally a wealth redistribution system. In medieval times, peasants and artisans worked autonomously. Their output was extracted by feudal lords who redistributed portions to retainers, like knights, occasionally returning some as festive favors. Lords didn't produce wealth. Extraction and redistribution were politically motivated acts. Modern institutions mirror this logic, increasingly detached from production, focusing on resource capture and redistribution driven by politics. Take the PPI compensation scheme. Corporations act like feudal lords, seizing and reallocating resources.
This process invariably expands entourages, layers of managers, supervisors, etc.
The 20th century rise of managerialism granted excessive power to non-producers, multiplying meaningless jobs. Third reason, work as end itself values. Modern society increasingly treats work not as a means, but as the goal. We don't work for resources, status, or happiness. Work is the purpose. This ethos stems partly from Puritans. They saw work as both punishment and redemption, inherently valuable beyond wealth creation. Post-industrial revolution, this morality resurged. Thinker Thomas Carlyle argued work shouldn't satisfy material needs but embody life's essence, with suffering building character. By the 1890s, tycoons like Andrew Carnegie championed the gospel of wealth doctrine. This doctrine claims capital, not labor, creates wealth and prosperity. High wages spoil the poor while labor builds character. Under this influence, people increasingly believe work gives life ultimate meaning, judging themselves and others by work ethic. If you're not constantly busy working, you're a bad person. What you actually do hardly matters. Evidence: public interest in wealthy leisure has declined versus the past. During the 1930s Great Depression, the poor loved films depicting aristocratic idleness. Now people prefer hearing how billionaires work obsessively, barely sleeping, like superheroes. UK media highlights royals' packed schedules, implying zero personal time. So far, we've covered why meaningless jobs exist.
Does the author offer solutions for this situation? He states he usually avoids policy suggestions. As an anarchist, he rejects elites imposing decisions.
Yet he reluctantly proposes universal basic income, UBI, in the book's conclusion. This means giving everyone equal cash sufficient for basic living needs. UBI's goal is decoupling survival from work. When survival isn't threatened, people reject meaningless jobs for valuable pursuits. UBI also slashes bureaucracy dramatically. In wealthy nations, countless government, quasi-government, NGO jobs exist to help the poor, setting standards, reviewing applications, distributing aid. But often this work blocks aid access. Example: 60% of eligible UK unemployment benefit claimants don't receive them. UBI would eliminate these redundant tasks and their costs. Universal basic income is another benefit. When everyone's livelihood is secured, bosses' attitudes will change. For example, like the ranch boss we mentioned earlier, they'll have to show basic respect to employees. Of course, in a free society, some people will invest their saved time into work others find meaningless or even foolish. But the author says it's hard to imagine this group exceeding 10 or 20% of the population. If we let people decide what they're best suited to do to benefit the world, how could the outcome possibly be worse than now? What do you think about this? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. All right, that's our interpretation of meaningless work for you. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.